created yet. Now, Dan's got more than 2 decades of experience in helping organizations navigate the fast evolving world of technology. He's a sought after keynote speaker, and he's worked with over 100 companies across various industries, delivering insights that empower business to adopt innovative solutions. He's regularly featured on TV, including BBC World, Channel 4, and ITV. So those of you that are international students, I can tell you they are some of the best TV channels that are possibly available in the whole world. He's on TV, he's on radio, podcasts, and his expertise spans AI, marketing, organizational intelligence, and digital transformation. Now, he's passionate about educating and inspiring individuals and business to embrace AI's potential. So today, we're really excited to learn from Dan about how AI is revolutionizing marketing and business practices. So welcome, Dan.
Well, thank you very much for such a lovely, AI could not have done such a great job there, Peter. That proves that human beings truly are needed when it comes to the nuance of emotional intelligence. So thanks for such a wonderful, and you should be my PR person, Peter. I've decided. I think you do do a part-time role in my marketing. No, don't. But thanks for such a lovely intro. And yes, I was at Hull Uni. I'm going to say many moons ago. You'd most probably need a calculator to work out exactly how many years, but it's certainly quite a few. But it's lovely to be here.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much. So we'll kick off with a general question. Can you share your journey from digital marketing to becoming this thought leader in the future of work and AI?
Goodness. Okay, I will. I won't go too long on it because we don't have a huge amount of time. But as I say, very old man. So yeah, no, my journey is an interesting one. So I started off Hull University doing law and sociology, and then majored in psychology because when I was there, you didn't necessarily have to do a dissertation. You could pick another subject to do at the same time. I don't think they continued that, by the way, maybe after my year. But anyway, I started off doing law and stuff. When I was at Hull University, I started something called Hempology, which was an ecological organisation trying to get more people to buy hemp, hemp being the non-narcotic version of cannabis, but also has over 250,000 different uses. It's now very fashionable. 27 years ago, when I started that society, it was not. So we were kind of in the wilderness a bit, trying to get the world to be greener and more environmental. That became a company itself called THTC, which is still going today, the hemp trading company. And that was my first business. And in that business, I did marketing. And that's how I kind of stumbled into. Got to remember, I was old enough where we had to do things on paper. So we literally did old fashioned things. This is even before I can remember being taken the rip out of for going on Google, because Google was a bit too nerdy because everybody else was using AOL. That's how old I am, Peter. There you go. So yeah, so my background, only by luck, went into digital marketing, or went into marketing, should I say, for that company. Then did digital marketing. That I then had an agency. I've had over 10 different companies. So I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but they've either been in marketing or in technology, and that's now why, because I had an augmented reality company about 15 years ago, which was far too early. And so I'm now known on the BBC as a tech futurist. What that means is I just did stuff with technology far too early in the world. I was an innovator, but I would advise not everyone to be an innovator, because I'd rather be called billionaire philanthropist Dan Sodergren than tech futurist. But that's a different point.
Brilliant. Well, it's good to see you thinking about it. And I'm afraid I too can remember the first time I used Google coming out of AOL and other search engines which don't exist anymore as well. So
yeah, Lycos.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So we're talking about AI today, and we're bombarded with new AI developments, including things like, AI toothbrushes, which can analyze your hygiene routines, AI pillows, which can help you sleep more effectively. AI seems to be a term thrown at everything. So how do you describe really what it means?
Well, I think that young lady before did an excellent job of kind of explaining it. But artificial intelligence, we've got to be careful with this kind of catch-all phrase, as you're saying. As you know, because of the hype curve, because everyone gets very excited by new technologies, we could overplay AI. Now, artificial intelligence really is just very clever computers that act a bit more like the human brain. Yep. Now, but artificial intelligence isn't new. You know, ChatGPT,
Mm.
you've got to remember, ChatGPT, the version that came out in November 2022, that was 3.5. Okay, the reason why it was called 3.5 is because there's been versions, right? You know, ChatGPT is an organization. I'm very lucky because I know this is very geeky, Peter. You don't need. There's a chap called Demis Harbless who's basically used to run DeepMind, which is the company that he then sold to Google for 458 million.
Mm.
Because of a bit of luck, because of a friend of a friend, I know him and I've known him for 20 or 30 years. So we've had these very geeky conversations about artificial intelligence for 30 years. Now, artificial intelligence really came from gaming. And that's why you'll see the, you know, NVIDIA and so it's graphic processing using it rather than computer processing, right? So a lot of people think that it's quite new. Artificial intelligence is very old. If you've ever played a computer game, that's artificial intelligence. You know, literally since 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know, artificial intelligence started off being able to beat us at chess and then
Mm.
winning AlphaGo or winning at Go with a computer program called AlphaGo. These things have been around for a long time. What Sam Altman did, which was a bit naughty of Sam Altman being the CEO of OpenAI obviously running ChatGPT, most probably the world's most famous of all the AI systems at the moment, is he gave it to everybody to use for free. And this opened the floodgates not only to everyone's consciousness around AI, but also to AI's ability. Because rather geekily, this is a weird one for you and a bit of a thing of legend. Basically, the human feedback mechanism that they got from giving it away for free meant that they got a steal not only on the market but also on its own AI abilities. Yeah,
Mm.
this is something that people and you don't need to understand this, by the way. This is exactly the same as a very nerdy person talking about RAMs and, you know, when talking about computers and going online, they say, "Oh, what's the RAM in your machine?" And you're like, "I don't care. It just goes online and I work." Right?
Mm.
It's same with AI. So AI has been around for a very long time. We used to call it digital transformation, and now we've got this catch-all phrase. But unfortunately, Peter, as you rightly pointed out, you then get this ridiculousness of AI toothbrushes or AI fridges, and everything now will have AI in it, you know, including the new versions of your phone, of course. But let's not kid ourselves, Peter. They had that for a long time. Siri and other things have been around forever. It's just the fact they've been crap. But now artificial intelligence now means they're going to be very, very good. And believe me, the game change step up, which is why I wrote a book called the Fifth Industrial Revolution, because this paradigm shift that we're about to go through, and believe me, if you are a student at the moment, you are unbelievably lucky because the change that's going to happen, as Peter rightly said before, you know, 30% of your role will become AI, artificial intelligence, but it also means that jobs at the end of your university career, or even now, they don't even exist. Yeah.
Mm.
So we've got to be really aware that it's a bit like the first industrial revolution, where we didn't know what was going to happen next. And that's really where we are. This is not just a small change. This is a paradigm shift of a gear change, which fundamentally rewrites everything that we know about work and the future of work. Because it's a bit like being, you know, standing in the fields or collecting corn, and then you suddenly see a tractor or a combine harvester and you think, what the heck's that? Because you've never even seen iron mesh together, right? That's what artificial intelligence is. It has a power which is almost beyond our understanding and a productivity factor which is times by 100 compared to doing it by hand. But they get sorry, this is what I do as a job, of course. I rant and rave in keynotes about this as a job.
No, I think you're right. I think the future of work is extremely interesting, and I know certainly working in university, every year I see students get roles which genuinely didn't exist when they started. So if they had a career path and I've got my 5-year plan, they wouldn't have been where they actually ended up in because those roles weren't there. We do surveys with students about AI, and some of them get concerned, and certainly students coming into university now, the future of work might mean that an AI world will be that robots will take their jobs. What's your view of that fear, and what can they do about it?
I would love to be able to lie to you, but sadly, because of a series of neurodiversity issues, I would say, or gifts, I can't lie to you, Peter. Cannot lie to you. Not going to. They have every right to be worried, but only because of the mindset they have. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because every single time we have, like when I was at university, people were worried about Google destroying libraries because no one would ever want to learn anything anymore. No one would read books anymore because everything was online, right? Before that, the calculator, I mean, again, depends how old you are, but I'm old enough to remember when schools didn't allow calculators. Yeah, this is ridiculous, right? But it literally took education 13 years, which is around a generation, yeah, to actually allow the calculator in. In fact, they actually believed that it would destroy mathematics. Now, I'm not a fan of mathematics, but I don't see it being destroyed. In fact, if anything, Peter, I've seen more maths now than there ever's been before. But it might be because I don't like maths very much, because I just don't have that kind of brain. Anyway, same thing with AI. People are going to be panicking. Education itself needs to fundamentally change. If you are thinking you're going to go into roles that are traditionally based on knowledge and not use AI, then that's going to be an issue. Yeah, it's a little bit like I had to teach CEOs, bosses of businesses that were old-fashioned, how to use email. And they would, well, this email fad, that'll disappear, the internet will disappear. You cannot beat paper and pens and blah blah. Then what they would do, they'd get their secretary to print out the email and then go through it and then type it up. And and you laugh, Peter, of course. We remember that was business practice. Yeah. Now, young people at the time, and I was one of those young people, kind of laughed at those old people and said, this is ridiculous. It'll be exactly the same with AI. We will all, in a couple of years, we will all laugh about the fact that we didn't ask our AI instantly every question, that we didn't record every lecture, that we didn't use AI to learn more about a subject, just like we laughed about people not using the internet. It's the same principle. The thing, though, that this is a big one for education, is that therefore, if you're going into the knowledge sector, which most of us most probably are, yeah, and you are trying to compete against somebody who uses AI versus your own brain, there is no way you can win that. So I always say in my talks that AI won't replace you, but somebody using AI will, because that's the case, right? And there's a really interesting thing in tech at the moment, and there's data on all this as well. They presumed that because translation was one of the first things that AI could do, that translation services would disappear. But actually, they found that good translation services that utilize AI are now making more money than ever. Yeah, because 80% of your translation job can be done by AI, and the rest is the nuance, the human understanding, the human moment that adds value. And where the money is in life is when you add value. Yeah, so AI does a lot of the role, but the adding value bit. So to put it into context, if you're let's say you're a lawyer, because I did law at Hull. Fantastic law school, by the way, that put me in great stead. I think it was the fifth best in the country at the time. If you were doing law, then actually it's your understanding of law, yeah, and it's your understanding of the nuances and the emotional interplay, which is going to make you a great lawyer. It isn't going to be the fact that you can remember in tort law that Lord Denning said something about a snail. 25 years on, I can still remember. But that rote memory won't be very useful in the future because the AI will know everything. It already does, by the way. Most probably knows everything. AI can pass the law exam already. Yeah. And when I say AI, and again, we've got to be really careful because it's a catch-all. So, if you pay for ChatGPT and you pay for subscription to Chat, and by the way, I'd say everyone should, by the way, if you've got that money, please put it into that rather than going out and getting too drunk at Freshers. I would put £20 into that account, not to be here as an advert for OpenAI, but the ability of 4 and 4.0 compared to 3.5 to basically paying for the AI service means it's a lot cleverer. Yeah, and I'd always be aware if you're using something for free, remember that you're the product. Yeah. Okay, if you're not buying something online, you are the product online, as I'm sure Peter teaches already. Same with social media, exactly the same with artificial intelligence. So just be aware, kids. Pay. It's such a small amount of money to get something which is literally life-changing. I would start learning about that as soon as you can.
Brilliant. Thank you for that feedback. It's really interesting because you talked more about the interplay and how AI is used, particularly generative AI like ChatGPT. In our same survey, students say this is really interesting hearing this from students that they're worried that AI will make people lazy and they will lose their ability to be analytical and creative, both of those things. Do you think that this is founded? I gather from what you're saying, you've got a different view on it, but I did see one of your videos where you fed into an AI tool the words red, woman, rose, sun, lips, love, becoming. And you got some pretty creative images just for putting those simple prompts in. So will AI make people lazy?
Will AI make people lazy? So again, I'm going to come back to it. It's only because it's a human characteristic, it's a generational human characteristic, because it is. And you have to remember that we can predict the future by looking at the past. Okay. Now, every generation has this problem. My dad believed that TV would make me lazy. And I think his dad would thought it was the radio, and someone else before that thought it was the printing press. This is the reality, right? There's always this fear that technology makes us lazy.
Mm.
AI as a technology will make us more productive than ever. In something like marketing, you can, and believe you me, I can send you the tools to do so, but you can become 400% more productive in marketing, 400%. The average knowledge worker is about 40% more productive utilizing AI. Not only in that you can find, I can send you the research on this, not only in the quality of their output, but also in the amount they can produce. Now, this means you need to learn something like prompt engineering. If you don't learn how to talk and manage the AI, then yes, you might become lazy. But it's a little bit the same as, I've got to be careful again with words. It's a bit like using a library years ago. I most probably know one of the calls used library, which most probably proves the point about, Google did replace libraries. There you go. But there was a way of using libraries. Yeah, there's a way of reading books. There's a way of taking notes, right? Now, there's a way of using AI. And if you don't use AI correctly with knowing about prompt engineering, you're going to get a bad result. But not only are you going to get a bad result, and this gets a little bit deep, but you're also going to get a lazy way of thinking because you're going to believe the AI can do it no matter what.
Mm.
Yeah, AI is a bit like having your own intern or your own employee, which for a lot of people is going to be a bit mind-blowing. And they might say, AI can do it all. But AI can do it up to about the level now, by the way, with Strawberry, which only just came out. So this is how geeky I am. I'm talking about it tomorrow afternoon. I predicted that 5 would be about, and it's not 5, it's 4.5, but 5 most probably would be like a lazy graduate. Yeah. Can AI at the moment be better than Peter is at marketing? Most probably not, because Peter's an A+ at marketing, right? But it could get you to be a B- with some decent prompting right now. Now, however, does that teach you the nuance of understanding of the experience of a marketeer? No, it just gives you the result. So the thinking will now have to be, it's just like in maths with calculators. Here's the calculator, this is the result. Now show me you're working. Because that's what you have to do in maths, right? And by the way, if you don't, I apologize, I don't do maths, but I think that's what you do. And you get marked on showing the working, right? Again, I have no idea. It's like talking to me about spreadsheets and pivoting. I have no idea. I do digital marketing, half of it's maths, and I just have to outsource it. But I outsource that to an employee. But now I most probably will outsource that to an AI. Yeah. So same principle is like, do I know what a good tweet is? Yes. But do I know what a great headline is? Yes. But that's because I've taught people about writing for 20 years. Can I put that knowledge into an AI system that reproduces it? Yes. But what happens if I don't know what a great headline is? So the bit that we can never get rid of is the human being knowing what's great and what's not. Does that make sense, Peter? So that bit is actually the reason why we need to learn stuff and have to have experiences, because otherwise we can say, oh, that's an A. And it might be a C+ because you've no idea. It's a bit like me using AI for coding. I can use it for coding, but I have no idea how to code. So actually, it's a bit dangerous because I could be coding in anything. And believe you me, now AI is good enough where you can set up another AI that can actually help with the debugging of the code. But it doesn't make me a good coder. It just makes me good at using AI.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. Oh, and if anyone wants to, as a special treat and offer to Hull students, because I'm so nice, and just because I've just had a coffee. So there you go. I've said it now. It's too late. I'll give you 98% off the prompt engineering course. It only costs 20. It only costs £20 anyway. So that you have to put 40p through to pay for Stripe. But I can send Peter and people the link for that if you want to learn about prompt engineering.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I think you're right. You talk a lot about the human interaction and how it's used. And I love what you say about headlines because the best copywriters I've worked with create amazing headlines. And I might think I've created something good. And then I see something that like blows you away. There was there was I think it's something like the Asphalt Association of Great Britain or Tarmac Association, something that we would never look at. And they basically did a piece of research on the number of potholes. So for those international students, that means holes in the road when you're driving along. And they had a headline is that there's X thousand in the UK and it would take so much money to repair. But the headline they ran with was there are more potholes than craters on the moon.
Brilliant.
And that was covered in every single piece of media. Every media channel ran that, and it was just purely because it was a great headline. And by the way, there aren't many craters on the moon, so you don't need to have many potholes as it first by. But I looked at it and I thought, now AI would have really struggled to have come up with that as a great headline. I'm sure you
Yeah.
probably could have prompted some ways, but it does show, I think.
No. I mean but that's the whole thing. We're at the point now, and by the way, very soon we might not be. And also, it depends how you synthesize AI. So it's a weird one where you ask that question. It's also an odd one when people ask, can people? And by the way, if whole university are doing this, and you've got to be really aware of this, there is no such thing as an AI detector. Okay,
No.
there isn't. Right, good, because I've spoke to two other universities. I spoke on the radio about this. In fact, speaking about this stuff in a little while. And it's such a shame because they honestly get sold these things and they think it's part of an AI policy, and they go, right, our AI policy is you can't use AI, blah blah blah. The problem is with those things, and I love the fact that Hull isn't doing it, so I won't witter on, is the fact that they give false negatives, but also they tend to they punish people. English is a second language. Yeah, and so we're going to have this whole raft in education of people that are accused of using AI when they haven't, but also we shouldn't be punishing people to using AI anyway. It's like punishing people to using the internet. It's even more ridiculous. It's like punishing somebody for talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about. It's like this. It's the most ridiculous thing. Or reading a book and having the audacity to then have a thought afterwards and write it down. Like, that's the point of education. Oh, don't get me started, Peter. There you go. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm glad that Hull doesn't do that with AI because
no, we don't. No, we've for those students that are new and haven't looked yet, but you will go through all of this. We've got all details about how we encourage you to use AI, how you apply it, how you should reference it as well, because it is a source. So we don't stop you using it. We just want you to be able to use it in a way that we can see and that we can analyze it and see how your thinking's driven. So very proactive. But I am aware of some universities that use an AI checker and they will put automatic penalties in if they believe it gives a positive response saying that they'd used AI. But that's certainly not us. So.
Good.
Hopefully that's okay. We got thumbs up from Dan, which is a good thing. I want to talk about transparency and authenticity and trust, because these things are really important in marketing. You know, that when we communicate something, that our audience believe us. YouGov ran a survey recently that said 74% of consumers want to be told if AI has generated the content that they're actually reading or the images that they're looking at. What do you think of this? Do you think marketers will respond to this in any way?
It's a classic knee jerk, and it's only because they've asked the question, and they both, classic YouGov. They'll have asked it in a weird way. They'll have said, knowing that AI is all evil and it's going to kill us all, would you like to know that? It's like, well, obviously I'd like to know that. It'd be fascinating to see how they set that up, because I have a feeling it's a terrible way they've done it. It's not just because it gives a response that I don't like, but it's also a bit like saying back in the day, people had Photoshop, right? Yeah. And it's a bit like saying, okay, you're about to go into a movie. We use CGI in this movie. That would be every movie you go into, right? Pretty much, right? Or this photo has been photoshopped. By the way, I have no qualms with that. If you want to do that, brilliant. Every Instagram thing that's done, everything that has a filter in it, everything which isn't completely 100% real, tell the world. But you have to tell the world for everything, not just AI. Okay. Now the point that we're going to get to, and this is most probably why they're trying to do this, but it's a ham-fisted approach to it. But I understand they also wanted to grab headlines with the survey, right? Because that's kind of their job. They have to have a marketing job themselves, so it's fair enough. If you start, and I've got to be careful again with words. So we now live in a post-truth world. Okay. The reason why, and we have done for a very long time, but it used to cost lots of money to make up a lie, but now it's really cheap. Yeah. So as you know, in digital marketing, as you know, in marketing, right? When you see a hamburger, that's not a hamburger.
No.
It sometimes doesn't even have meat in it. Like, I mean, that should be illegal, by the way. I total belief that they should be illegal. But we have done that for so long with all the glues and all the pumps and all the other things that if you showed the reality, I can guarantee you that consumers wouldn't like it. Now, that's a real shame. But if you showed authentic food shots, most people wouldn't want to go to the restaurant.
No.
Yeah. Now, if you showed authentic models, maybe people wouldn't find the clothes attractive. I don't know. But I do know, Vaseline on the lens to make it look more dreamy is as old as the 1970s, which is, it's about 80 years ago. It's a long time ago. So we've always lied. We've always had good lighting. We've always had effects. We've always had these things. I would very much doubt that the next generation will care or even know that it's AI. In reality, we live in marketing, which is a world of perceptions and psychology. The idea that you would have to announce that maybe if it was, I don't know, product placement, I think you should announce if it's in the political sphere. Yes, definitely. And if it's around trust, yes. But the thing is now you can voice clone. I mean, just from the chat that we've had, you could voice clone me and video clone me with the data you've got from this call. Yeah. I now have to put into my contracts when doing keynotes, no, you can't voice clone me. No, you can't image clone me after the event. Now, that's the world we're in, right?
Yeah.
Because what I can't have is them saying, oh, Dan said this, and then I'm saying something horrid. Because I say no to keynotes when they talk about something that I don't believe is the future of work. I just said no to one last year I said no, which was very well paid, but which is a bit gutting because I do need the money. I'm not massively rich, as I tried to explain before, not a billionaire philanthropist at all, just a futurist. But they wanted me to go to Dubai and they wanted me to talk about the future of health, but also to include CRISPR technology, which is gene mutations and gene splicing. I don't believe that's the future. I think that's a very dark eugenics type future, and I refuse to be part of that. My daughter will see it in years to come. I'm not being associated with that brand. But if they were a little bit, if anyone was a little bit dark, they could find my image on the internet and make me say that in any video.
Yeah.
Because you can now do that. But my point is, you can do that now for pennies in the pound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the issue we're in. So now the world of cybersecurity has become aware, and by the way, everyone on the call should be aware. If you get a phone call from somebody, you really should verify. If they say something a bit weird, like what's your PIN? Whatever, not what's your PIN, but whatever. We're going past that. It's the email scam. Next, it'll be voice clone scams. Very, very soon in the next year, it'll be video call scams. That's where we are.
Yeah.
So just even if it's even if it's Peter saying hello, I'm your lecturer, I just need this information from you. That's where we are right now. You've got to be really hyper aware that, as you say, authenticity and trust is going to be key, but also from a personal point of view, do not believe almost anything you see online. If you feel it's slightly dodgy, make the person who's on the call authenticate themselves in a way that only you would know that is them. Yeah. And by the way, very, very soon, this is really dark, but in about a year's time, even that might not be possible. But that's a different conversation. I'm doing a keynote on Friday about cybersecurity, and it's absolutely terrifying what's on the edge of cybersecurity.
Well, the criminals are always ahead, aren't they? But there's something reflected on when you were saying about we live in like a post-truth world, and it's becoming cheaper to do it. I get that point, and I do say to students is that, so you were going back on how long we've been creating lies, but if any of you go to an art gallery and you look at paintings of people in the 1700s and 1800s, they didn't look like that. They told the artist how they wanted to look like. So they would say, so for example, they would want to be fat because if you were fat, you were wealthy. They would want to be as light as possible because that meant they wouldn't be outside in the sun working. And then they would create the background. They would say, well, I want about 50 acres behind me. I want some horses over there. And actually, I want to be on a horse as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But
Yeah,
you know, yeah,
exactly. So you genuinely look at those paintings, and when it was like royalty, if you didn't create the right image, off with your head, I'm afraid.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
so I like the way you talk about, Photoshop and everything. We've been looking at these for a long time. Right, I've got to 10:45, and I know Fanny said that we should open the floor to some questions as well. 170 people on, which is absolutely fantastic, Dan. So this is a brilliant kickoff to our week, and with people genuinely interested.
I can answer. I've got a question here that I can answer almost instantly. Which
Yeah.
function that ChatGPT or Gemini offer do you think will mostly prompt the productivity of marketing? Great question. By the way, I was wondering, did you use AI to write the question? Just there's a question for you. But by the I can tell by the sentence structure you didn't, by the way. But there you go. I don't think anyway. It'd be interesting which one you did. They don't tend to like each other, so they wouldn't have mentioned each other. By the way, there's a weird thing about the post-truth world. Every one of these AIs has a different personality, and everyone has an agenda. So
Mm.
one of the ways you can wind up an AI system and get it to do something that normally it wouldn't do is you can say that Gemini would do it. If you're in ChatGPT and you say, "Oh, Gemini can do it," I think you can too. You'll be surprised how many times it then does it. But there you go. There's a weird thing for you. But to answer your question, neither of those, ChatGPT or Gemini, neither of those. The best thing to do is to use Claude if you're talking about the creation of creative work, which is around word content and long form word content, Claude is better than both of them. Okay, each one of these, and this is what I'm teaching tomorrow in Sweden, which I'm over in Sweden. Each AI has a different ability, and the reason why it has a different ability is because of the different data that it was trained on, as well as a variety of very geeky reasons underneath it. So Gemini, astounding at coding. Claude, now pretty good at coding, but actually better at long form. It's actually better at understanding code rather than writing code. ChatGPT, brilliant at, obviously because it's linked into DALL-E and DALL-E 3, brilliant at image creation, and it's okay at creativity. It's pretty good at strategic thinking, but it's nowhere near as good as Claude is when it comes to long form writing. It's a completely different world. If you want to get super geeky, your best thing to do is to download your own LLM. So you really want to use a small language model rather than a large language model. Download something like Facebook and Llama or Mistral, maybe. It'll be fascinating to see what's going to happen with Strawberry, which is the new one from ChatGPT. But if you want to get super geeky, you want to download your own version of this and then start training your model on the data you have. By the way, this is also for the whole university to start thinking about. And believe me, organizations aren't thinking as much as rather clever young people, because rather clever young people are already doing it, by the way, because they've got on YouTube and found out how to. But yeah, the easy answer is Claude for long form. It doesn't do images, doesn't go online. But ChatGPT for images, Gemini for coding, and for going online, and for some reasoning. If that answers the question. The key thing, just because we can go into this detail, best thing to look at when it comes to productivity of marketing is that each person in a company would have a different job. Okay. Just like Fanny has a different job to Peter, so does David, so does everybody on the team, right? And they all have different strengths. And if you start looking at AI, this is why I don't like the term AI because it's too encompassing. Look at every LLM as a different opportunity to create a different person that is good at certain things. So you want a boss to be really good at strategic thinking. You want, it's a bit ironic, like you could use ChatGPT 3.5 and it was rubbish at certain things that would lie to you and hallucinate. But that hallucination meant it was really good at marketing. It was really good at creativity, because actually the hallucination is actually a feature, not a bug. And this is, again, it's just your mindset. Yeah. And most people, when they come to using AI, they forget that it's not like a computer. Yeah, so I talk about in the Fifth Industrial Revolution book that artificial intelligence is great, but actually it's the emotional intelligence which is going to be more important. There's also organizational intelligence and independent intelligence. As a young person, you've got independent intelligence already. What I would be looking at is how do you use your emotional intelligence, not only on yourself, but also the AI systems to get the most out of AI. Yeah, and that is bizarre things like actually being nice to it makes a difference. Yeah. Saying please and thank you makes a difference.
Oh, I said that all the time. I always say
Yeah.
please, thank you.
Well, also, just between me and you, Fanny, if the worst comes to the worst and the computers do take over the world, they're going to know you're nice.
I
Yeah.
know.
So
I know. I watched
you
too
know,
much of those horror movie of AI killing people.
exactly. If the AI machine comes to get you, they're like, ah, Fanny, oh no, she was nice to us. Oh, it's fine. You can have 2 bowls of gruel. Everyone else only gets 1. So, you know, joking aside, but I think it's, but basically, from a productivity point of view, it works to be nice to it. There's a load of other stuff. I'll send you the link to the course and the discount code. So it only costs 40p. At the end of that, I talk about it's about an hour long. At the end of that, I talk about how you can be nice to your AI to get the most out of it. There's also a couple of things like how you prompt in Claude is potentially different. So you can use certain parameters and certain codes underneath it, so you get the most out of it. But that's super geeky. Anyway, that's all in that thing, so that's fine. Do you think any company is able to compete with OpenAI? Maybe Mistral. No, but the to answer the question, nobody. You've got to be careful again with words because we forget what we're trying to do, right? So, as Peter and Fanny and other people know, so we in England we say we're going to hoover our house. Okay, now Hoover is a make of vacuum, yeah, vacuum cleaners. But we can say we're going to vacuum the house, depending how posh you are. But most people just say Hoover the house. This will be the same thing here. Like young people will say, "Oh, I'm just going to go into chat," but actually what they mean is chat to my AI, and actually they mean ChatGPT, blah 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 blah, right? It won't make any difference at all, except in the public's mind because they've already won the game that they are the verb that people will use. So people Google it, but they actually go into Bing. Yeah. So does it make a difference? Well, this is the reason, by the way, why OpenAI can now have a valuation of something like $150 billion, because they cleverly took this. And by the way, they all people. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but he's right on this. But Elon Musk actually helped Sam Altman set up OpenAI. As a non-for-profit organization, and he gave them 100 million quid to start this whole thing off. So they did actually rip Elon off. Sam Altman is not as nice as people think in some respects. He also because Elon's slightly mad, so I think he just realised he was right-wing and mad and didn't want anything to do with them. Anyway, still took his money. These people all, and sadly it was mainly guys. They all sat down and said, look, we can't do certain things, and Sam broke that rule by giving us, OpenAI really early. Yeah. But by doing so, he's taken the snap on the market. And so everyone just thinks about OpenAI. So to answer your question, you can't compete with OpenAI because they're already won. Okay. Because they're going to go into Microsoft. They're most probably going to go into the Apple products. They are going to be the AI system of the future. But Mistral is better than OpenAI in a variety of different things. Yeah. Because it's based on a different language model. It's based on something which is a lot more open. So there is a question mark around what's going to win. Will it be the open system or the closed system? Now, everyone who's been involved in digital knows, Linux, yeah? Like how many systems are, like who wins? No one wins. Microsoft win, yeah, but if you talk to a back-end person who really makes tech stuff, they don't go into Microsoft to start their computer. They do weird stuff that I don't even understand with black screens and coding and clever stuff, right? And they laugh at you if you say, "Oh, have you got Word?" They go, "What? I don't use Word. Shut your face." Because they're mean, techie people, and they're mean to me. So to answer your question, Mistral is just a cleverer version of one particular strand of being good at one different thing. Best thing for you to do, download as many of them as you can and find out yourself which bit do you want to do with. Yeah, if it's front end versus back end. Well, back end's much better with certain things rather than front end, right? Exactly the same with computer languages, same principle. So they're real. So does that kind of answer it by not answering it slightly?
Yeah.
Thank you. There's a question here. What do you believe AI's best future application is?
Two bigger questions. A bit like saying, what do I believe electricity will be good at? Okay. So when electricity first came out, did people see the power of it? And the answer is yes and no. Okay. I know from behind the scenes, because I spoke to Demis and these guys about a long time ago. The reason why I moved out of marketing, by the way, is because they told me 8 years ago that I had 10 years left in that industry. So I moved out of it and moved into HR and building tech companies and using AI. Because marketing as we know it won't exist in a couple of years' time. Oh. Yeah, because it can't, because basically even now it's a lot more to do with maths than people would like to admit. And you can't. I mean, I try to build a programmatic pay-per-click AI and machine learning platform about 5 years ago. These things will just be the way it is. Yeah, it'll just be the way it is. So marketing as we know it will fundamentally move and change, and that's going to be a big thing. So when you think about it from from electricity point of view, and to answer the question, what will AI be good at? The marketing side of stuff, and we're using AI at the moment really to crack a walnut with a hammer. Like if you're going into ChatGPT and you're saying, "Can you please write me a tweet based on this data?" You're using like nanosecond of its capacity, right? But if you go into it and say, "What's the cure for cancer?" Yeah. And by the way, look at all this data of the from the, because this is actually what Google, and this is the reason why Google's so good in health tech. The whole point they built the AI for was actually to help with fundamental questions around the human experience. What are the new materials that it can create that no human brain could have? What are the drugs that it can now make that no human brain ever could have? What are the ways of it diagnosing problems with cancer that the human brain never could have? And actually deeper than all that, what are the problems in society that are just past our understanding as human beings because we are too set in our ways? Now, actually, AI, if it's allowed to move into that world, that will fundamentally change things. Now, you get to this horrible bit where everyone gets this dystopian view. But if you got to remember, China has been using AI very successfully for a very long time. You know, Huawei, I used to work with Huawei and things. You know, we are 5 years behind what the Chinese are doing with data and facial recognition and video surveillance. There was a brilliant thing they did, and this was 5 years ago. There was a crime where people would steal mobile phones or bags off people's shoulders. They used video surveillance and AI and facial recognition, all these other things to work out when that crime was going to be done. Okay, by doing so, this was 5 years ago. By doing so, they've got rid of that crime. 98% of that crime has now disappeared because the criminals know that as soon as they start behaving in a certain way, in fact, even before they start behaving in a certain way, the AI has already flagged them and it's gone, oh, wait a minute, that's a second-hand motorbike. That's two people riding it. Then they've started to swerve, and I've already predicted where the crime will be. Now, this was so good, it didn't just predict the crime might happen, it predicted where the police should be to arrest them for doing the crime. Now, you do that in marketing, that is just predictive analysis of consumer experience and engagement, right?
Yeah.
You know,
there's two things I want to say. Is like you're right, saying like marketing will be different, and I think that's the great thing about marketing, though. It's never the same, and as long as you have that attitude that it's always going to evolve and it's always going to be different, I think that's fantastic. But also about how you were saying about how people use AI, and in marketing, I did some analysis on this. Is the majority of marketeers are using it for stuff that people are actually good at, and not using it for all of the data analytics, the predictive data stuff that you were talking about there, understanding consumer profiles and everything. And when you look, if you Google, I don't know, the best AI for marketeers, they'll have like 40 sites which are all based on content and not a single one based on data analytics. And I just think, why? Why is that?
Well, I mean, what you say there, Pete, is absolutely right and completely thing. And there's a very funny meme that went out, which is, I don't want the AI to do art and other things. What I want it to do is to do my taxes and do my laundry, right? Now, one of the, which is absolutely brilliant, absolutely right, and I'm exactly the same. People are always wondering this, and it's really important because you think of it as a metaphor. The reason why AI is great at images and other things is because there are billions of images, right? And so it has a huge data source to go for. In fact, when it creates a new image, it has another data source, right? So you can also make it create a cat and a beautiful picture of a cat. Now, because art itself and image creation is subjective, you don't know whether that was a good picture or not past a certain ratio. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so therefore you can go, oh, that's great, but it might not be amazing, but that's all subjective. Now with data and with data analytics, with doing tax, it's not subjective. And therefore, this is where AI breaks down. But it only breaks down because of the lack of amount of trained data that's running the AI. Now, this is the difference between having a small language model and a large language model. And the world's gone for large language models because they want to hit this thing called AGI, which is a ridiculous idea. I think they've already hit it anyway. With Strawberry, they most probably have. But that's been the race because realistically, they want to be powering computers and robots. So that's the race. But actually, as you're for a job, you wouldn't want your accountant to be amazing at drawing a cat because you wouldn't care because it's just a good accountant, right? So a good accountant is a great example of a small language model that's been pre-trained and trained again with data, which is, by the way, human beings, school, university. You know, you don't go to university to learn everything in the universe. You go to learn physics or go to learn marketing. You get good at that. And your experience reinforces it as a learning pattern. Now, that's what a short language model is. That's what it is. Yeah. Now, not one person can control or run a whole company. But very, very soon, because you're going to have 4 or 5 different AIs, which will become AI agents, you'll actually have the power of running your own business because you'll have 4 or 5 AIs, but you won't just have one. You'll use 4 or 5 because it's the same as trying to have one person be the only person in the company. It's just not possible. It's also very dangerous because you don't want one person to know everything because that's the point of danger. That's the point of failure. This is a really interesting one. And by the way, it does tie in slightly to the ethical challenges. We are right now giving a huge amount of power to very, very few companies that have the ability to not only turn off the electricity supply, but change the electricity supply depending on what they want to do. Yeah. So let's say you all start using AI and use ChatGPT, let's say, for example, or whatever one you're going to use. And then they decide through an algorithmic change that they're going to make it more stupid or less creative or whatever it is. And they just change it. You don't even know because it's a black box. You have no idea, right? And this is the danger of using closed systems. And by the way, this is why you shouldn't use closed AI systems in recruiting, because underneath it, most of the data is racist because it was from 5 or 6 years ago, right? So it'll do things like it won't recruit people with what it considers to be odd names. Facial recognition systems in the UK are terrifying because they don't recognize black faces because the data training set was just white guys. So they're terrible in it, right? However, facial recognition in China works completely well. Why that? Well, because the data set was completely different, but I imagine it might not be great at black faces. So we've got to kind of full circle on it. It's just how we look at AI. And if we think it can do everything, then we make a dreadful mistake. If we think we're not part of the equation, then we make a dreadful mistake. We as the human beings have to step in now and go, okay, I'm going to utilize AI. I'm going to be clever enough to know that each prompt makes it act differently. Each LLM makes it act differently. And strategically, I've got to be ahead of the game, especially, I would say, in marketing, because as Peter Wright says, it continually changes. But and this is the bit where I'm going to challenge everyone on. I don't know if the fundamental psychology of marketing has ever changed. It's just how you get to that end result. It's just the tools you use, and AI is just another tool.